Hi, welcome to Take 5, where we daily consider devotional thoughts from Oswald Chambers' book, My Utmost for His Highest. Today is August 3rd, and the title of today's devotional is The Compelling Purpose of God. He said to them, "Behold, we are going to Jerusalem." Luke 18 and verse 31. Jerusalem in the life of our Lord represents the place where he reached the culmination of his Father's will. Jesus said, "I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me." The events that occurred in Jerusalem were the purpose of Christ coming to earth. It occurred to me several years ago the fact that Jesus literally was born to die. That was the purpose of his birth. He accomplished what no one else has ever done. He lived a sinless life so to break the hold that the law had on mankind. His sinless death was one not for himself, but for all who believed in him. This is what would be accomplished in Jerusalem. Seeking to do the will of my Father was the one dominating concern throughout our Lord's life. And whatever he encountered along the way, whether joy or sorrow, success or failure, he was never deterred from that purpose. He steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. Nothing threw him off course. According to OC, the greatest thing for us to remember is that we go to Jerusalem to fulfill God's purpose, not our own. In the natural life, our ambitions are our own, but in the Christian life, we have no goals of our own. Children are often asked, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" From early age, they are questioned of what ambitions they have. I continue to feel the weight of that question due to my still seeing a lack of accomplishment with my life. There's been times I've described my life as being a series of bad decisions linked back to back. I'd prefer to close out on a higher note. Both mine and the child's life were driven by the mentality of accomplishments being the tangible evidence used to measure success. This is the mindset of our civilization. So, how does God measure success? It's summed up in one word, obedience. Accomplishments are not a substitute for obedience, and obedience is much harder to achieve than success. OC says we talk so much today about our decisions for Christ, our determination to be Christians, and our decisions for this and that, but in the New Testament, the only aspect that is brought out is the compelling purpose of God. You did not choose me, but I chose you. No matter how much we may surprise ourselves, both good and bad, with our behavior, we never surprise God. Sins which we have not even yet thought of committing, he has already written down in as it says in Psalm 139. Chambers tells us we are not taken into conscious agreement with God's purpose. We are taken into God's purpose with no awareness of it at all. We have no idea what God's goal may be. As we continue, his purpose becomes even more and more vague. He didn't say more clear, but more vague. The more your human wisdom is convinced of having a clear idea of God's plans, the less clear they can become. OC offers this. God's aim appears to have missed the mark because we are too nearsighted to see the target at which he is aiming. At the beginning of the Christian life, we have our own ideas to what God's purpose is. We say, God means for me to go over there, or God has called me to do this special work. We do what we think is right, and yet the compelling purpose of God remains upon us. His compelling purpose remains upon us because we continue to miss what it is. Chambers reveals the work we do is of no account when compared with the compelling purpose of God. And what is that purpose? Says Chambers, it is simply the scaffolding surrounding his work and his plan. Chambers refocuses our outlook. His purpose is not something of our work, it's him. When Christ took the 12 aside, it was to explain how all things written by the prophets were about him, which was the same explanation he offered them in Luke 24. Christ's purpose is himself. Chambers says that God takes us aside all the time, but we have not yet understood all there is to know of the compelling purpose of God. We miss his purpose due to our continuing to focus on ourself. To see his purpose looks away from selves and turns our eyes upon Jesus. Thanks for being here today, and now may God's grace and peace be ours as we seek to live our utmost for His highest. Have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye now.